And so to unwrap something, you want to add the unwrap modifier, which is in pull down here, and unwrap. And so you can see here that this adds a lot of green lines to it. And so ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to open up the UV editor here, and that's going to give us kind of a mess of lines here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go mapping, actually here, go here, and then off click, flatten mapping. And I'm just going to do a basic 45. And so you're going to have a ton of geometry with a lot of little green lines, and those green lines are seams. So everything that we do here ultimately needs to be cleaned up. So you can see our blade, you can see some of these pieces here, and so on and so forth. So what we need to do is we need to go through and clean up this work so that a lot of the lines kind of line up with things, and some will match together and some will not. So an example is here, if I click on, go to edge mode here and click on this green line, right, click on it, and then I go into stitch selected, you can see it's going to overlap something and it's not going to be quite right. But so some of this stuff I might have to go through and ultimately like grab a loop here and right click, stitch selected, and that's going to add a couple pieces to it. So we have to take apart and then put back together all these little pieces, because if we don't, there's going to be some semblance, there's going to be like no semblance of kind of mesh. Now some of this stuff is easier than you think. It seems like we're doing a lot of stuff here, but simply grabbing a polygon here, and we're going to just grab this, the hilt right here, and so this is all of this. And when you select, you can go in and uncheck the back facing, so we don't have to do it multiple times. But so I'm going to grab that, and that's one sword. So you can see that's several pieces on my scene here. And what we can do is simply go down to this, into projection, and grab this, and we can fit. And so you can see this projection now is ultimately that size. And then we can change this by simply scaling it to our scale here. And I'm going to just move it off when I'm done with it. So we can do this on the whole pieces. So like this here. I can move this, grab this and move it over. And so you can start seeing what you have left to do. Some things are easier just left if we grab these pieces and stitch them together. Right click, stitch selected, and then as we stitch these pieces together, so you can see that these pieces, like the circle here, when this, I grab this and turns blue, if I stitch it together, it's going to stitch it as a loop, and we don't want that. So then what we can do is we can grab an edge here and we can align it straight. So we can do a linear align like this, move it over like so, and let's rotate it a little bit, right, like something like that. Grab this one here, do the same thing, and then let's move it like so. And so we can go through and clean up these pieces to create a better representation of what's going on. So you can see here that this piece is basically this loop here. So instead of like trying to, do each individual loop or do like a layer of loops, break it down into something more interesting or more reasonable. So in this case, I would go to polygon. Let's grab. Actually, let's just grab it like this. So I'm going to grab all like that, and then I'm going to grab that there. And so this is my piece here. Now you can see this is a lot of information here. And so again, if we center it, we fit, and then take that off, and we can start seeing. Now, if you don't comprehend that this might not be the right scale, you can always add a checker pattern. So we can click here and we can add the checker pattern, and that overlays what our checker pattern is. And you can see how they're squashed here. We ultimately want to squeeze that down so they become squares. And so this is probably a better representation of what was before. And then we just need to go through in the edge mode here and stitch these other sections one by one. Now, because we use stitch and break so much, we can set up hotkeys for them as well. But the object is ultimately to go through and do this. Now I'm going to do a lot of this off screen so that we can come back and I'll show you an example of a good unwrapped map. Alright, so with this done, as you can see, I went through and grabbed most of the geometry here and kind of cleaned it up as far as the unwraps. I grabbed objects like the edges of these cones here and flattened them out here. I've grabbed and stitched all this stuff together so that it creates a much more reasonable kind of grouping. And when I got done, I went and UV packed these. I normalized clusters, I rotated them, and then when I hit OK, it fills everything in there. So you don't have to hand place everything in there. There are still a couple things, still a couple pieces that I can go through and stitch a little bit here and there, and that'll kind of fill up. But ultimately, when you get this amount done here to the point where everything's kind of identifiable, then you can actually start unwrapping. So things like this here, these little pieces here, I would have to still go and go my polygons here, grab these, and ultimately just UV map this according to whatever direction I need. So in case this is probably a Y, and I shrink this down and scale it down after I uncheck the projection box, and scale it down using control, and then place it back into the scene. So any little bits and pieces that you see like that, you need to go clean up and take care of. Even something that's a little bit off like this, just by simply adding a UV map on there and going through and scaling that down and moving it back in place is going to make your life easier when it comes to doing normals.